All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Justin with Veteran Compost. And today we're going to talk about uh, really the thing that I brought with me is some links I think are helpful. Now, if people have specific questions, please feel free to post them and we'll take them as they come. One of the things I wanted to share today was a lot of the links that I thought were really good as I got started in the business. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of talk through them and then I'll also include them here in the comments so that everyone has the physical link and I'll save you all the trouble of Googling everything. So appreciate everybody who joined me now or in the future. We'll keep this up afterwards. But just a couple things that I thought were really useful when I got started, because the way I started in composting is I just started Googling and poking around and trying to find information. So these are the things that I think are useful if you're thinking about starting a compost business or just learning more about composting in general. The first thing here is the on-farm composting handbook. So if you've ever heard of, I'll put it in here, on-farm compost handbook. I'm going to give two links for it. The first one here, this is like the digital link. So if you don't mind reading PDFs, this is a great book. This is like the book I would say for learning composting fundamentals, whether you're going to do it on a farm, even at a small or large scale. If you look around at a lot of the community composters and farmers that are out there, a lot of folks will refer back to this book being very helpful. It kind of takes everything, all the principles of composting, and boils it down to really simple math, algebra, geometry, all the middle school type stuff. So it takes some more complicated ideas and parts of composting and really makes it something you can understand and is very simple. In the Army, I like that everything in the Army was written at an 8th grade reading level, pretty much. You could learn how to build a bridge, or blow it up. And it's kind of the same thing here, not to insult, Bob Rink and his book. He's a great guy and everybody that works on the project. But it just makes it really easy to understand and makes you want to kind of like attack it and get into it. So I like that. So that's the digital copy. And then what I'll do is I'll include here as I kind of copy and paste these as I go, the link for the physical copy. So like the physical copy, we have a couple that we keep on hand for kind of study purposes, at Veteran Compost, like where I'm at. We kind of encourage folks after they get started, if they want to learn more about composting, to review the book and, we talk through it and kind of study it. In the state of Maryland, like where we're located, there is a composting license that you have to take periodically. Actually, my license I have to renew at the end of March, so I have to take the test again. And a big part of the test is based on this book. So I always like to have a hard copy around. I'm not a digital book kind of guy. So what I'll do is I'll include a link here for a hard copy of the book. I think it's a great book to own. It's about $35, so it's not a very big investment. And it is like the thing I look at the most when it comes to composting. It is the book that I refer to the most when I'm putting together presentations or trying to explain a concept to people, or just kind of like double check myself. I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years, but that doesn't mean that I know all the answers or that I'm 100% right. So always good to, check yourself, I guess, as it goes. So, so a hard copy of Compost Handbook. So there's that. That's the link for that. And like I said, that's like all these links I'm sharing today. I'm not affiliated with these people. I don't get a kickback, or I have no financial interest. So whether you buy the book or you download it for free, whatever works best for you. I have no financial say in any of these things. These are just links that I think are useful. And like I said, as I go along, if you have any questions, let me know. But this book, very, very useful. They're making a new edition, is what they're eternally saying. Supposedly it's coming out soon. So there may be a newer one soon, but I think the book as it stands right now, I love it. It's a great book. It really helped me a lot in understanding things and really going from being a backyard composter to someone that was handling more material. So the next thing is the Cornell Compost website. I really like their website. They kind of have information for you if you're trying to do composting as a business. And they also have information if you're trying to just do backyard composting or composting as a teacher, as an educator. So if you go to the website, there's kind of different paths you can follow to get more technical information if you're trying to do larger commercial systems, and then other things like lessons for teachers, backyard composting. Cornell, it has a great ag school and they do a lot of research and a lot of information about composting. So just knowing Cornell and being aware of them and maybe poking around, you'd be surprised all of the free available information that they have. And the folks that work there, in my experience, every time I've talked to them on the phone or email or at events, always been very, very helpful. Always very, very pleasant, and have learned a lot from talking with them and reading the things that they put out and publish and things like that. So let me get the Cornell Compost website, and I will include that link here as I try to hit the right button here. So here's the link, and I hope all these links work. I tried them before I got on here. So Cornell Compost website, very, very useful. There are some really technical worksheets. Like if you wanted to figure out the exact formula for like your carbon and nitrogen ratio and things like that, they can walk you through that step by step. That can be really useful. Like at this point, we don't do that day to day, but like when we take in new feedstocks, we kind of go back to the basics. Like we took in a material a couple of years ago that is almost like a papery cellulite type material. It's a filter cake from an olive oil producer. And so we went and did the lab testing on the carbon and nitrogen ratio and then used that calculation to figure out the right way to mix it in. So like, once again, even far down the path of doing this, sometimes it's helpful to have these worksheets and that math to refer back to as, you try to work a new material into your stream. So we still use some of the information on this website even today, but I think that's a great place to learn a lot and kind of look at that. And then, that may spur you to have other questions and want to look elsewhere for other things. Now, one of the things that we do that's a little bit different is not only do we do traditional composting, we also do worm composting or vermicomposting, which a lot of times, like regular composting or worm composting, two separate businesses, we do both of those types of composting. I think it's really important because for our customers to have worm castings available, because there really is nowhere else in our region where people are producing them at scale. So we like to have the material to include in our mixes, like our seed starting mixes and our super soils. But then we also like to have it, available for our customers. And the worms are really fun. Like I've enjoyed over the years, really learning and expanding the process that we have. For a while we were actually selling the compost worms. And then that just got really difficult to do and to be financially viable. The downside on worms is they're a living thing, so you can't really keep them in inventory. Once you pull that pound of worms, if that buyer does not materialize, that can't sit out on a step for a day like a bag of compost can. So we ran into some having live inventory became an issue, and we just kind of decided we wanted to focus on making the worm casting. So all that's to say is we do worm composting, and one of the best resources for worm composting is NC State. So Rhonda Sherman is an awesome lady. I love Rhonda, and honored to consider her, I would say, a friend. And she runs a great kind of hub of information for worm composting, really for the world, and that's at NC State. Like, go figure. So Rhonda's the lady or the person in the world that really is the hub of worm composting. And so if you go to the NC State worm composting website, which I'll include the link here, a lot of great information there. Rhonda's done a couple of books. She's done a bunch of articles. Very, very great person as a person and very good with worm composting. And so I occasionally, even still to this day, will reach out to her with a question or anything that I see her put up for like an article I love to read and learn more about. But NC State is a great resource. So if you check out that website, you'll learn a lot about worm composting. She also puts on a conference. Now, I have not been to this conference, but it is very popular. I think they're coming up on like their 21st year. I'll include the link here for the Vermicompost conference. And that conference is all about worm composting. And they usually go visit a couple sites, talk about different technologies, about the business and the science of worm composting. I think that's great because if you've done any internet research, you can find out a lot about traditional composting and commercial composting, community composting, the regular composting of yard debris, food scraps, aerated static piles, windrows. A lot of that is out there and easier to find. Worm composting, it's kind of funny. It's over the years, it's a little more secretive. I think people hold things a little bit closer in terms of how they do it. What are their numbers? What are their methods? What's working, what's not working. And so the worm composting side of the compost world is a little more secretive. So it's nice to have Rhonda and to have this conference to kind of open up some information, because it can be hard as you're researching to learn a lot about worm composting, whether it be fact-based or anecdotal, because people just don't share as much, is what I found. And that's not terrible. I mean, you learn a lot by doing. So if you're thinking about worm composting, I would definitely just get going. But those are two resources: NC State and the conference. And then while we're talking conferences, the next one would be the U.S. Compost Council's conference. So they just had it a couple weeks ago in Austin. So I'll include the link here for USCC's conference. They still have the information for the event that happened in January up. I'm sure pretty soon they'll probably change over, start talking about next year. But that conference is a really good one if you're getting started to go and to kind of meet people and network. And if you're in a part of the country where maybe you're one of the first people talking or starting a compost kind of operation, you go there and you're among your brothers and sisters and you can feel really inspired. I used to go every year and get like really pumped up and excited to get into the spring season and get going again, because it's an industry, here in composting, where sometimes you feel all by yourself or you feel a little run down. You go to this thing, really charge up your batteries. It's also really good for the vendors and the equipment demo. So the last day of the conference is an equipment demonstration. I think the videos are online from the last year or two of that. And that's really fun if you've never seen the equipment, whether you're just kind of curious learning more about the equipment that is in the industry, or you're actually trying to make some buying decisions. All the major brands are there, all kinds of grinders and screeners and loaders and bagging machines and compost turners and all that stuff. And those people want to really show off how great their machine is. So they'll blow a horn and 5 different grinders will fire up, and every company's trying to stuff more stuff through that grinder and show how great it is and how much it can chew up. So it's like a drag race of processing equipment. And it's really cool to watch. You're just out there in your hard hat and your reflective vest. They give you a free lunch. They bus you out there, and you can watch all these different pieces of equipment. I've only owned a grinder once in my life and never want to own one again, but they are really cool to watch. And it is interesting to talk to the reps, and while you're out there rubbing elbows with other composters, and learn about what they use equipment wise and stuff like that. So US Compost Conference, Council's conference, is a great event. They've done a lot last couple years to really have more networking. They have a young professionals kind of system where they have mentors and mentees. So that is really useful if you're starting out or you're younger in the industry, to kind of maybe get linked up with someone and feel a little bit more, welcomed into the industry than being on your own. And then the last couple links I want to do here, this is talk about quickly 3 different companies that do compost systems. So whether you're thinking about building a system yourself, or maybe you want to have someone build something or help you with the design, we'll kind of go in order of, I would say generally, I guess, price or complexity of those systems. But even if you're thinking about doing something yourself, or you're just kind of kicking the tires, these 3 websites are really good, because all these companies have really good track records and a really good portfolios of projects. So you can go on their websites and just look at other things they've done, other systems they've made, and maybe get some ideas about that. All 3 of these are really big on aerated static pile technology, which is what we use at all of our facilities, I would say, for traditional composting methods of food scraps, yard debris, horse manure, any kind of manure. I would say aerated static piles is the way to go. I'll probably make some more videos this year kind of talking about the difference between aerated static pile and other technologies. But the first one I'll share is O2 Compost. So O2 Compost is probably the lowest cost option in aerated static pile technology. So ASP, aerated static pile technology, Peter, who owns O2, his smallest system, if you go on there and look at his micro bin, a couple $100. And you get not only the plans to build it and some of the components, but you also get lifetime technical support. So as you start your first pile, you take your temperatures, and then you share with him the Excel document of your temperatures, and then, hop on a phone call or an email and you talk about, hey, here's what I'm seeing. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And he's going to talk you through those first batches of composting. So when I got started, I found the property I was going to use, found some materials, got with Peter, and that's what really helped me through those first couple piles because he's a PE, so he's a licensed engineer, and that was really helpful as I talked with state regulators and local government to say, look, I'm new to this. I don't know. I'm not a composter by profession. I'm figuring it out, but I have this guy working with me who's a licensed engineer, and he's my technical advisor on all this, and that really helped with a lot of the concerns that state and local regulators had because they said, "Oh, well, okay, there's some engineering and some science behind this." And so as I built my first piles, I followed Peter's directions, and every day I'd send him a spreadsheet. He's on West Coast time, so later in the afternoon we'd hop on a phone call and we'd talk about things, and we'd make kind of single variable changes if we needed to. So maybe today we change how long the timer's on the blower, or maybe we open up one of the slide gates to let in a little bit more airflow and things like that. And that really helped me feel comfortable with what I was doing. I wasn't by myself, and it really shortened the learning curve. So once again, I don't get anything out of promoting Peter. I just really appreciate the system. I think the technology is really affordable, really practical. It's the system I've used for 12 years. But just in general, I think ASP is great. If you go on his website, there's just hundreds of projects, and you can see all the different ways people around the country have taken the ideas and kind of made it fit their terrain or their locations. So, maybe check that out. And like I said, even if you're going to do your own thing, you don't want to hire anybody, at least you can get some ideas of what things look like. So the next kind of step up would probably be, and I don't want to insult any of these companies by kind of ranking them in terms of price points or whatever. I hope they don't take offense to that. But the next thing would be Green Mountain Technology. So Green Mountain Technology, they have a couple of off-the-shelf systems you can buy, like the Earth Tub and some in-vessel stuff. And then they also consult on projects. Really nice guys, great track record, really good systems. So you could either, look at like the Earth Tub or some of their in-vessel systems and really buy something that shows up ready to go. Or you could have them help you build something. But Green Mountain Technologies is the next one. And then finally, ECS. So ECS, they do some work on some really big projects. They've done some stuff here in Maryland with some municipalities. So they're can be a little bit pricier, a little bit more complex. So you're talking about like more computerized controls, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, automated systems and things like that. Some of these companies, I'm not totally up to speed on what they're selling right now, but you're talking about either laptop or phone enabled control systems where you can get on your phone and you can change your compost blowers, you can change your timers and things like that. You can get reports on airflow, temperatures, things like that. So, for some folks like running very, very large scale facilities or dealing with challenging feedstocks, that's something they're looking for. Or some people, like the bells and whistles. I just know, full disclosure, I'm not the first guy in line for the iPhone. So I'm on on an older model, right? I'm not the first guy. I'm in line to get an electric F-150, but I'm okay waiting a year to get my F-150 and let someone else learn the electric bugs. So kind of the same with composting. I will admit that I'm more of an analog, lower technology guy, not a bells and whistles guys. But for some folks, that's really useful to have, or a requirement based on the operation and the things they're doing. So those are kind of all the links that I ran through there. I wanted to make sure I shared those. I see there's a couple of people here. If anybody had any questions, let me know. Otherwise, that was what I wanted to share this time around, was all these different links. And then what we'll do is if folks have anything they want to see on future live systems or live chats, I should say, let me know. I think probably what we'll do next time around is do a live tour of the facility. The most recent tour that I have posted is from like 2 years ago, during COVID, when we couldn't give an in-person tour. And I'm very aware that the audio was not good. That's been brought to my attention numerous times in the comments on that. So, what we'll do is we'll probably do another tour here in the next couple weeks of the facility, walk people through that. So if there's particular things you want to see on the tour or particular parts of the operation, soil screening or blending, how we do feedstock sorting, things like that, let us know. And those are things maybe we can spend a couple extra minutes on, as we go. So, okay. Well, hey, I really appreciate everyone who joined us here today. These are all the links. If you have any questions as you go along, please feel free to reach out to me. I love either answering questions right away, or if it's a really, something we can do another video on, I'm happy to do that. My goal this year is to do more videos that help people out, whether you're doing stuff at home or with a business. Okay, so I see the question. Do we think the shortage of fertilizers at farms will be helping compost and vermicompost as alternatives? I think that's really interesting. I was just looking at an article in one of my farming things today about people changing to growing more wheat because of the Ukrainian situation. So I think already we're seeing like on the fly changes to crop production. I think that it's interesting depending on your price point. So like for us, our compost works for like urban and organic small scale farms. Our price point per cubic yard is still too high for farmers. Now we're trying to figure out how we can try to get that price down lower, or where fertilizer would have to come up to. So for like our compost, if you're a retail buyer of our regular all natural compost at $39 a yard, even if we heavily discount it, we're still a little too rich. But I think that for lower price point composts, I think that there's going to be a really compelling year this year for them on that. So I think you'll see that. I also be curious to see, like, with landscapers and smaller scale gardeners and farmers, if they start to make the change based on what we're seeing with climate change, the shortage of fertilizers, the rising fossil fuel prices, because you need a lot of natural gas to make fertilizer. So like as the prices keep going up, I think it'll only look better for compost sales. But like for our business, probably not because of our price point. But if you have a lower price point compost, I think if you have really good nutrient analysis and things like that, I think you have a really good sales case for that. So I see the question about taking temperatures. So right now we do manually take our temperatures several times throughout the week. So I'll probably do a video coming up about the thermometers we use. We use RioTemp. Once again, my brother doesn't work at RioTemp. I don't get any compensation, but that's the thermometer that we've used over the years. They make really durable, accurate compost thermometers. So with the thermometers, like the manual ones, you kind of get what you pay for. Like I've bought cheaper ones from like Granger or other places, and you can just tell the stem is really thin and the thermocoupler at the bottom is just not very accurate. And so theirs are like very, very a lot heavier. They run deals too. So if you get on their mailing list or pay attention, like we recently got some thermometers. They were running like a Valentine's Day special, or I forget what the special was, but or Christmas or something, where we got a really good deal on the thermometer, and it came with a little screw-on thing to help push in the thermometer. And so we take those manually. And the way we do it is we take one of each of our cells. So each of our in between each of our pipes, the same guy does it every other day, so that he's grabbing them at the same place, keeping his notes. We have tried remote sensors. So we used a Bluetooth enabled sensor. I'm trying to think who it was that we had. It was a Bluetooth enabled sensor. I'll have to think about what the brand name was. They're very nice people, and they advertised that these things worked in like nuclear reactors and hostile environments and all kinds of stuff. And we actually took the data logger and we put it. It was Onset, is who it was, Onset, and we put it inside like a Tupperware container to keep it like out of the weather. And even though it was inside a thing and like triple protected from the weather, it's still. They didn't last. They kept breaking on us. They kept getting infiltrated by just small amounts of moisture. And even though they said they were able to handle it, they just kept failing. So it was really nice when it worked because we had Bluetooth enabled temperature probes, and I could walk down the line and just kind of have my phone in front of me and grab the data as I went. And it was also data logging around the clock. So like when our like inspectors would come to visit and say, I need the last 3 months of your data, I would print out like a 200-page report of like all these lines because we were taking them around the clock and drop it on the hood of his truck. So it was kind of like, fun to have all that data and everything. But the issue with the Bluetooth enabled temperature loggers was the durability. So there are some that are made for this purpose, for composting, for organic products. So you can find those out there. The price points were just the two issues we've run into is they're expensive. So I think if we had a grant, we would probably do it. I don't know that we could justify the cost. And then number two is you need to have really good like Wi-Fi and internet. And so like some of our sites two of our facilities are off the grid, 2 of our 3 facilities. So like we don't have necessarily the wattage to have around the clock power dedicated to this because we need our power from the solar panels for other things on the site. So there are things that are out there, but we grab them manually right now. So talking about net emissions of the site, it's really interesting. So if you know what, one thing I didn't list in here, and I'm realizing now, is Biocycle magazine. So they had a physical magazine. Now it's biocycle.net. They've gone online only. So Nora Goldstein is the publisher of that. And I'll probably Google here quickly before I log off and include that link as well for Biocycle. If you check out Biocycle and go on there, Sally Brown is a professor out in Washington, and she does a lot of interesting math on emissions and on carbon, savings and everything else that goes into it, of kind of like the net effects of composting and all that stuff. And there's a lot of debate about what's better for the environment when we look at the waste hierarchy of like digestion and energy production being above composting, and then also like capturing the emissions and things like that. So I've never done the math. And I'm sure there's some things we can do to be cleaner. Like, for example, we use aerated static pile technology. So we use electric blowers. We use solar energy. At one of our sites, we buy wind energy in our main facility in Aberdeen. So our Alexandria site, off the grid solar. Aberdeen is wind energy that we purchase. And then our new site that we're going to do is also off the grid solar. So like the things that we can control. But I haven't done the calculation. But if you check out Sally Brown on Biocycle, she has done some of those calculations, and I think it's kind of interesting because there's so many factors that go into it. The carbon sequestration into the ground, the volatile organic compounds, the VOCs, while we're producing the compost, the fuel and the transportation to pick it up and drop it back off. So there is a lot that goes into the model, but I would check out Sally Brown on Biocycle for that. In terms of what vehicles did we use initially when we started picking up the food scraps. So this is where we could have like a 2-hour live chat where I start cracking beers down here at the bar and talking about the good old days. And I'm sure if I had a couple pictures to jar my memory, but the way I started out doing it was I was driving a 2004 Chevy Trailblazer. So it was a couple years old back in 2010. And due to funding and just everything, I didn't really have the means to get a really big truck. So what I bought was a 10-foot utility trailer, single axle utility trailer on Craigslist for $450. Still have the trailer. We're going to put a new deck on it, some new wood on it, probably the next couple of weeks at the farm. And that's what I used. I would wheel the 32-gallon and 64-gallon bins onto that trailer. And when I went to a customer, I'd drop off clean bins and I'd wheel on the dirty bins. And it was just backbreaking. I ended up putting hundreds of thousands of miles on that Trailblazer and running it into the ground. But that's what I used. Then I went from that. The first truck I bought specifically for the business was a Ford F-350 stake body truck. And I went to Apple Ford in Columbia, Maryland. Very nice salespeople. They were just, their heads exploded when I show up with a trailer full of bins. And there's me and my dad came along to help me because we're putting all the bins in the back of this stake body truck. And we're trying to, the biggest buying consideration was, well, how many bins can I fit on here and how's it going to work? So we're out here in, what was it, December of the year that we did it, in the dark at like 7 o'clock at night, moving all these trash cans around the back of the stake body truck. And the sales guy was just like, I'd never seen that before. So that's what I went to. I went to an F-350 with a lift gate. So what we typically do, our model is we do a 1-for-1 swap. So we drop off clean toters. We pick up the ones that have food waste in them. So we operate stake body and box trucks that do that with lift gates. So some of our customers are loading docks like hospitals. Some of our customers, the bins are on the ground like a restaurant or a school. If I was to buy trucks right now, like the trucks that I'm buying, I would get away from diesel. I'm a gas, until electric becomes viable. I'm a gas engine guy, and mostly we're buying box trucks right now for collection. And then we obviously operate, dump trucks for the delivery. So if I was buying trucks, I'd say gas powered, have yourself a lift gate, and buy the biggest truck that you can afford and that you feel comfortable driving. So like we really love Isuzu cab overs right now, and gas powered with probably like a 16 or 18 foot box on the back. So, well, cool. Well, hey, I appreciate all the questions, and we're hitting the half-hour mark, so I don't want to monopolize people's time. If there's other questions you have as you go along, like I said, please send them to me. I'm happy to address them, or we'll make another video. I'm always looking for new ideas. So, okay, one last question. I'll take this one too. So, marketing tools and strategies that have been most successful. I think things are a lot different now than they were when I started. So in 2010, when I went around and cold called restaurants and said, "Hey, I want to pick up your food scraps," they were like, "Oh, like a soup kitchen?" Like no one knew this idea of collection and all that stuff. I'd say now you go around and talk to chefs or food service or dining managers, and they get it. They've either worked somewhere where they had it, or they've read about it in publications. It's something that people get now. So um, the biggest thing, if I was to like try to recruit more food waste collection customers, that one can be tough. It can be tough to get to the decision maker. I would probably start out at organizations approaching like sustainability directors or sustainability managers. They're probably really sympathetic to composting or really interested in composting, but understand that they don't have the purchasing power usually or the decision making. So eventually you're going to get to a point where you get to involve food service or facilities or things like that. But I would target sustainability managers or sustainability program directors and ask them to try to help you get to the people that can make that decision. Um, and then in terms of the product sales, I would say like really just get the word out depending on where you're at. Like for us, I always say I've never sold a bag of compost. I just let people know that we're out there. So really we don't, if you come to me and say, "Hey man, why should I buy your stuff over this cheap bag at Walmart?" Hey, sounds like you got it all figured out, man. I'd buy that bag at Walmart. Sounds like a good deal. So we just go for the people that are looking for what we have. So that's kind of our marketing there is we just make a really good product. We try to be active on social media. We try to do more just like old school stuff too. Like we hung a sign by I-95 behind our farm and people have seen the sign and showed up. We have a flag out front that says open, like just really simple stuff too. People see the logo on the side of the truck and Google us and then give us a call and say, "Hey, your truck just drove by me. Can you tell me, do you guys have topsoil? What's going on? What's this all about?" So we've kind of done a blend of for every new thing we do, new technology, working on our SEO or our social media, we do some old school stuff too. Magnets and t-shirts and things like that. So the combination of old school and new school and just working on the whole goal is really just, getting the word out to the people that are looking for us. That's been our marketing strategy. Probably at some point when we've gotten all the people that are easy to know about us, then we'll have to start digging in on education and comparing why we're better than the stuff at the box store or why we're better than fertilizer. But for right now, we're just going after the people that get it and just letting them know we're here. So, um, cool. Well, there you go. So, hey, I appreciate everybody's time. If there's other questions, just like shoot us an email. So info@veterancompost.com or drop a comment and I'll make some more videos. And then, like I said, a couple of weeks from now, we'll do another Facebook Live or not Facebook Live, YouTube Live at the facility where I'll do a tour and we'll walk around. And then that way, if you have questions about the process or how we do things, we can kind of dive more into the composting process itself and the way that we run things. Not that I'm the best at it, but I'll just show you one example of the way we do it. So with that, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate the time and I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. Happy composting.